Hello everyone, welcome to Crafty Garden and part 2 of my new Fleece to FO series. My name is Stephanie and you're joining me in the mountains of Vermont where I live with my husband, our 2 dogs, and our cat. So part 2 of this series is going to be all about carding, and in this video I'm going to be specifically talking about drum carding my Corriedale fleece. So if this is your first time checking out this series, I highly recommend watching part 1 where I talk about all of the background information about the fleeces that I'm processing, and then later I'll be spinning hopefully into garments. This is going to be a sweater hopefully. So I give all of that background information in part 1, so you can go check that out if you're interested. So today I'm going to be showing you how I take these washed dry locks, clean lanolin-free locks, and prepare them for drum carding. So first up, I'll just tell you that it's important for your fleece to be clean and dry. And for me, I had to make sure that I removed all of the lanolin from this fleece, and I have in part 1, I have a video on how I washed this fleece. And this drum carder, the instructions for this drum carder say not to card a fleece with lanolin left in it. So for me, that was really important. So here I have some of my Corriedale fleece, and I'm going to take you through the process of turning this into one of these big, lovely, fluffy bats. So, first up, I thought I'd mention what kind of drum carder I have. So I have a Strauch Finest double wide. So Strauch is the maker, and I think you can see the tag down there. Strauch is the maker, the brand of this drum carder. And it's a finest, which refers to a couple of things. The carding cloth, the ratio that it spins at, or when you crank it, the ratio it has, and the number of teeth per inch or tines per inch, and then the double wide refers to just the size. So the finest comes in 2 sizes. There's the single wide and the double wide, and I have the double wide, which just means that I can make a bigger bat. That's the only difference. So let's go ahead and get started, and I'll show you step by step how I prepare this fleece for carding, and then I'll show you how I remove the bat from the drum carder, and it'll look just like this. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so now I'm going to take you through the steps that I follow to create a beautiful, smooth bat. So first thing I thought I would tell you is that I already have a lot of fiber on this drum carder. It's actually nearly full, so I won't have to spend a ton of time filling the drum carder before I can show you how I take it off. So this is nearly full, but the process is the same. You just repeat it until you have filled the drum. So this drum carder comes with a brush, so you can see the brush there. So the first thing I want to do when I have an empty drum and I'm about to start carding is to take my brush and turn it down so that it's pushing against the drum. And I want to decide how much pressure to put down on it. So I'm just going to push down on it a little bit and then turn these black knobs, which tighten it and hold it down. So now I have the brush pressing against the drum carder. That's going to help push the fiber down into the teeth and make for a smooth bat. So I have my brush down and that's ready to go. So the next thing that I want to do is take some locks that I'm going to start preparing. So I have a few different sections here ready to go. Like I said, completely dry and clean. Little bits of dirt are somewhat unavoidable, at least, It doesn't have to be 100% clean, but I mean free of lanolin and as clean as you can get it, of course. So the first thing I do is I take the section that I'm working with and I just tear off a little piece. And I don't want to take a big chunk, I just want to take a little piece like this, something like a 1/2 inch or so. And then I come over to my, this is called a teasing tool. I kind of think of it as a lock pick. So it's a teasing tool. And what I like to do is take my fiber and I always make sure that, so there's the cut end where the shears cut against the skin of the sheep, and then there's the outside bit, which was you know, on the outside of the sheep. So the tips. So I always feed my fiber so that the tips are going in and the butt or the cut end is at the end. So I take this little bit of fiber and I use my teasing tool to spread it out and open it up. And this one was very nicely, it was already pretty open. And then I lay it on my drum carder and I'll fill up this tray before I start cranking. So I'm just going to repeat that process. So these were very nicely already pretty open. I'll take a different segment that's a little bit more, that'll need a little bit more opening up. So I would say no more than this. Just tear off a small amount. And then, like I said, I have the tips going this way, and then I'm going to put them onto the tray that way. And I always do it that way so that I'm always putting the locks on the same way. So I'm just going to carefully run this across. You don't need a lot of pressure or force, and you want to make sure that you're opening up the fiber and not your finger. Because when I first started this, I was putting a little bit too much pressure down, and what I was doing was really scraping skin off of my thumb. So I don't recommend that. So I'll just keep repeating this process. I just tear off a little piece, like about that wide, and then I'll just carefully run it across the teasing tool and continue to fill up my tray until my tray is full. So this is all that I'm doing. I'm just repeating this process over and over again, tearing off small pieces. So I can even split that in half. And then always making sure that I'm laying the locks on here in the same direction every time. And why that is because if you have long hair, if you've ever had long hair, and you try to brush it, where do you start brushing your hair? Do you start at the top of your head, or do you start at the ends? And if you're like me and you don't want to rip your hair out, you start at the ends and you work your way up. So I think it's kind of similar for this process. Is I'm starting, kind of think of it like this is where it was attached to the sheep. I'm starting where, like at the ends, at the bottom, and that way, it's when you drum card it, you don't hit those tangles. It's a lot like brushing your hair. So if you start at the top, you'll hit a bunch of tangles. But if you start at the end, you won't, you won't, you know, rip the hair, the wool. So I'm just going to continue filling up this tray. I hope that makes sense to you guys. It seems like a silly comparison, but it makes a lot of sense to me. I think anyone with long hair probably can relate. If you've ever had somebody brush the tangles out of your hair and they start at the top and they try to rip your hair out. Okay, almost finished. maybe one small piece. Okay, so I have my tray full, and now I'm going to start feeding it into the drum carder. So I have a manual, so I'm going to be cranking it. If you have an electric one, then you would just flip the switch. I feel like the manual's a little bit safer. But so all I do is, yeah, my brush is down and it's pressing onto the drum. And if I'm just starting out, I'll just try to evenly feed across the whole drum, and I do avoid the outer 1/4 to 3/4 of an inch, and that's partially to that's to keep the gears and things, the working pieces of the drum carder, free of fiber. So I don't want the fiber to get all tangled up in the pieces that are turning down here. So I keep, you know, 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch gap on the sides. So what I do is just start to evenly feed across. So I'm just looking to make sure that I'm not just feeding on the right side or the left side or the middle. I'm going across the whole thing. I want to make sure that I'm feeding on an even layer. And then once I've done that, I'll check. So there's a seam right here on the drum carder, and this is where I'll remove it. And I use that to kind of evaluate how I'm feeding the fiber on, and if there's an area that needs more fiber. So maybe, you know, oftentimes, sometimes I'll have areas that are a little bit thicker, and then typically for me, the outer edges, I usually have to focus on putting some more fiber on the outer edges. So I might take a few of the locks and then just feed maybe the left side for a little bit, and then I'll just feed the right side. And then once I've done that enough times, I'll stop and check again, and that's not nearly enough to fill up a gap. I'd have to do, you know, quite a few more pieces, but then I would check and I'd say, okay, that looks even now, this looks even now. Okay, now I just noticed there's like a kind of a dip right here, so I will take some of the locks and I'll line them up where the spot that's kind of lower, so like right about here, and I will just feed that on to try to get that up to the same thickness as the rest of the batt. Okay, so for me, I'm going to focus on the outer edges right now because, like I said, this batt has already been filled up quite a bit. So I just want to make sure that I'm creating an even batt that's the same thickness across the whole thing. Oh, and I thought I would mention, sometimes I have pieces that have, they're really clean except for right at the tip, and I've taken to kind of opening them up like that, and that all of the dirt kind of falls out into the teasing tool, and then from there I'll just do what I was doing for, you know, all of the locks, opening it up like that, laying it onto the tray. And then I'll just repeat that. So these have some dirt. You're not going to be able to see it. but just in the tip, it has some dirt. So I'll just lay it down and kind of, you can see that looks a lot more open, and that just allows all that dirt to fall right out. Then open up the lock and put it on the tray. So I found that that works really well for me. It makes my teasing tool pretty dirty. This teasing tool has kind of a layer of dirt on it, and it picks up some of the shorter pieces that it kind of captures some short little bits in here as well. And I have taken actually the doffer brush that you used to clean the big drum. I have taken that and cleaned this out before. Not the dirt so much, but the little bits of fiber that get stuck in here. Okay, so I'm focusing on the edges because I need some more bulk on the edges. So I'm just going to continue to feed this edge. I'm going to feed this left side. This is a little bit too wide. I just want to focus right here on the edge. So I'm going to break that in half. Same for this one. Same for this one. I want to make sure that I'm really just putting the fiber where I want it. Okay, that looks a lot better. It could still use a little bit more. I'm just going to do a little bit more, and then I'll show you how I take the batt off of the drum carder. Oh, I did tell you that I've tried a few different methods, and sorry I'm not looking at the camera, but I kind of have to look at what I'm doing. When I think my first batt that I made, I took about 4 ounces of fiber. I weighed out 4 ounces of clean fiber, and I decided that I wanted to try and streamline the process a little bit. So I took and opened up all 4 ounces and put it in this big paper bag, and that created a ton of static electricity, and the fiber would literally fly out of the bag. So I'd go to put the fiber in, it'd want to stick to my hand, and then I'd go like that, and then sometimes there was so much static electricity built up that it would come flying right back out of the bag. So I gave up on that idea. I was thinking that I could do like, you know, a production, you know, you do all one step at one time and then, you know, have all of it opened up so then I can card it all at the same time, but that didn't quite work out. So I find this way works for me. I just fill up the tray and then I will put it onto the drum, and then repeat that process until I have filled the drum. So one way that you can tell that you filled the drum is when the fiber stops going on to the drum. So when it starts wrapping on this, this is the slicker licker. So when it starts to stop going onto the big drum and it starts winding itself onto the small drum, that's when you know you should stop. It means your drum is full. And if I do see a, sometimes I'll have teeny tiny little second cuts that I don't notice until I'm opening up the locks. Kind of like maybe, no, that's just a tangled bit, but sometimes I won't notice until I'm at this stage because they're so small, and then I will make sure I remove those before I put them on the drum. So I'm just going to continue to fill up this side. This side needs a bit more. Breaking these up so that they're concentrated where I want them. And of course, this is a machine, and you need to be careful when you're using it. Of course, if you have a drum carder, you're going to want to read all of your instructions so that you are following the rules. You want to keep your hands away from the slicker licker, the small drum. It has very sharp, very sharp blades, really. So you don't want, we're not trying to card our fingers. Okay, it still needs some more. Okay, so I'm ready to take my bat off of the drum, and I decide that either because the drum carder will no longer put fiber onto the drum, it'll start wrapping on the slicker licker or the small drum, or I just decide that that is enough. And for these bats and for this fiber, I've determined that about 3 ounces is the maximum that I like to try and put onto this drum carder. So for a different fiber, it could probably be 4 ounces, but this is a very bouncy, springy fiber, and I think about 3 ounces is what I like to try and get on here. Okay, so the first thing that I do is I start at usually the right side, it doesn't really matter, and I just put a little bit of pressure on the drum and then pull back and then kind of up until that releases. And so I'll just repeat that. So I'm using this seam right here. I'm going to insert it and pull back some of the fiber and make sure that breaks nicely. And go back over a spot if I missed some. And I'm just going to continue. That's a little bit too much. Don't want to take too much. Just take little chunks. I'm just going to continue across until I have removed or separated the fiber across the entire seam. Sometimes you have to go back over a spot because you'll miss little bits. And I take my time with this. I don't rush it. I try not to get in a rush with things that, you know, I want to do it right the first time. And if I find myself getting in a rush with anything that I'm doing, spinning, sewing, drum carding, I will try to remind myself that it's better, I'm going to be happier in the end if I don't rush, and if I can't get out of that state of mind, then I'll just leave it alone and try to come back to it later. That's just my tip, especially spinning, because you get in a rush and then you will, that will change, it will change what you're doing. You won't be as consistent. your spinning won't be as nice. So same thing with this and sewing and a lot of other things. Stay relaxed, don't rush, and you know, take your time with it. Trying to get some of these little stubborn fibers right here. Okay, so this is as good as I'm going to get it. So I'm done with this now. I can set that aside. So first I like to get all of these little bits up as best as I can. I think it's helpful if you can get as much as the fiber out of the teeth from the start, because once you start leaving little bits behind, they'll want to drag more friends, leave more friends behind. And what else? I also take this and kind of push it back down so that when I'm moving the drum, it doesn't get caught on the slicker licker or the small drum. Okay, so I'm ready to go. I'm just going to grip the fiber and carefully pull back. And like I said, I am not rushing this process. I'm taking my time. I would rather take my time and have a nicer end product. And I don't want to leave too much waste on the drum either, but since I'm going to be I'm just going to be drum carding more of this fleece. It's not a big deal. There's a little bit left. And I like to grab right close to the teeth. Okay, so I feel some resistance once that other end goes past the small drum. And I think pushing down the other end helps it move past easily. So I'm getting some pieces that aren't wanting to come off. So if you're thinking this is taking a long time, it doesn't have to take this long. I could just really quickly remove it. It would leave behind more fiber, and I don't want that, so that's why I'm taking my time. And I can be very patient. I can have the patience of a saint when I want. Sometimes I can be impatient, but I try not to be. We're getting there, nearly finished. And I don't feel too bad about, I feel like if I was doing a tutorial, I would want to, you know, maybe get to the point quickly, show it in a very clear, concise way. But this is not a tutorial. This is a series that's like a video and photo journal. And I'm just sharing my process with you guys. So I think that takes a lot of that stress away that I might feel recording a tutorial. All right, I'm gonna just make sure I get as much of this as I can. And ta-da, there's my finished bat. This is a very, very smooth bat. There's a side view. And if I noticed that there were still big chunks, the locks weren't very open, then I could rip this into sections and then run it through the drum carder again. And that would go, a little bit faster, but I think taking the time to carefully open the locks and the fact that this is just a quality drum carder, I can get away with only one time carding, and I get a very, very smooth, beautiful bat that's ready for spinning. And I will be showing you how once I finish making all of the bats, when I finish processing the total amount of fiber that I need for the spin, and in general they recommend about 2 pounds for a sweater. So once I get to that point and I have all of the bats that I need, then I will make a video on how I start preparing this fiber for spinning. So you can look forward to that in the future, but it might be a while. It's going to take me some time to card all of this fiber. Okay, so I'm going to turn you over to the next segment where I talk a little bit more about this drum carder in depth and why I chose this drum carder. Okay, so now that you've seen how I make a bat and the step-by-step process that I use to make a bat, I thought I would tell you a little bit about this drum carder and why I chose this drum carder. So first thing I did when I was thinking about purchasing a drum carder was to research what was out there. So what different kinds of drum carders were available, what are they used for, so for example, this is a Strauch, so a Strauch Finest double wide, and Strauch makes a few other drum carders. So when I was doing some research, I was looking at their different types of drum carders and trying to educate myself about the differences and figure out what I want for the kind of spinner that I am. So I know that there's a drum carder called the Mad Batter. I believe I have that correct. The Mad Batter, which it looks very similar to this, but the major difference is that the teeth, the tines per inch, there's fewer tines per inch or teeth per inch. Whereas mine has more. So my drum carder is made for processing finer fleeces, and the Mad Batter is made for processing either a coarser fleece or making art bats. So if you wanted to put a lot of different kinds of fiber, you wanted to put chunky bits, whole locks, neps and noils and silk and Firestar and all of that, and you want to have a big chunky art bat, then the Mad Batter would be a better choice for you. And you're probably, as a spinner, you're probably more interested in spinning art yarns. So I was more interested in spinning to make garments and wanting to have a smooth, very easy to spin carded bat for making garments, for spinning consistently and evenly and having a nice smooth yarn. So that's what I was interested in. And so like I said, I did a lot of research. I looked at the different brands that are out there, and I came to, I think, some of one of the owners, I think it's Otto and Joanne Strauch. So they have some videos on YouTube of their drum carders, how they use them, and how to process different fibers and stuff, some interesting fibers. And this was apparent to me through watching some of their videos, checking out their website, which I'll link below, And I'm linking that below so that if you guys have any questions about the drum carder, I'm going to recommend that you go to their website, because they have a great website with lots of information on this drum carder, lots of the specific technical things, you know. They really have some great information on their website about this drum carder, how it's made, the different materials that go into it, and all of that information. So I'll have that linked below in the description bar for you to check out. So a couple of things that I was interested in. This carder has 128 TPI, so teeth per inch, and the teeth are 3/8 of an inch long. So I think the Mad Batter, for example, probably has longer teeth, and definitely the tines per inch, or the teeth per inch, there's fewer teeth per inch. So this has a 5-to-1 ratio. I'm not going to get into too much about what that means. They talk about it on their website if you're interested, but it just refers to the number of times that this rotates, the big drum rotates, relative to the small drum. And there's a 5-year guarantee for this machine. I have the manual, so you can see the crank right here. I have the manual. There's also a motorized one. So mine has a 5-year guarantee, and I believe the motorized drum carder only has a 1-year guarantee. And that covers defects in the material or the workmanship. So 5-year guarantee is pretty good. There's a ton of information about this drum carder on their website. There's a chain mechanism that runs this versus some other drum carders use like poly bands. And yeah, so if you're interested in buying a drum carder, I just recommend seeing what all is out there, and you know, and then comparing and contrasting different ones that you're interested in. You know, for me, I was able to get the double wide because I have the space for it. Space might be a major concern for you, so you might not want to get the double wide, but I have space for it, and I wanted a drum carder that I could grow into. And, you know, through my research, I found that this drum carder was going to be something that I could really grow into. So even though, you know, I'm a newer spinner and I'm newer at processing fleece, I knew just by knowing myself that I'm very interested in being a spinner and just every aspect of it. So I knew that my love for this kind of thing was only going to grow, and I wanted to have a drum carder that I wouldn't grow out of very quickly. So I went with what is probably one of the top of the line models. It was an investment, and I did put a lot of thought into, you know, why I wanted to purchase this drum carder and make sure that it was going to be the proper fit for me, and yeah, that I would be happy with my purchase. So that's a little bit about my drum carder and why I bought it. I guess I could also mention that the nice thing about the Strauch drum carder is that this handle, so if you have the manual drum carder, you can see that the handle turns freely. On this, I have just a little fold-out table for the video, but you can see that the drum carder, the handle turns freely, and in other drum carders, you would have to have the whole thing set on the side of a table because the handle would not crank otherwise. You have to have the handle off of the table so that it can freely turn. So that was a nice added feature for this drum carder. Oh, I guess, yeah, I do have more to talk about. So it comes with the brush, and it comes with an accessories box, which includes just about everything you need to get started. So you don't have to buy a bunch of extras. So in this box, I have my Doffer brush. So this is made to remove fiber from the drum. If I want to clean this, let's say I remove this batt and I want to card something new, and I don't want this, little bits of this fiber getting into my next bat, I will use my doffer brush to clean this drum carder off. It also comes with this small cleaning brush that's made for cleaning the liquor in, which you can't see right now. There's a smaller drum. That's what this is for. It comes with clamps that you can use to clamp your drum carder to your table so that it's nice and secure. This knuckle saving bat pick is a great tool. You can see that. And that's how you remove the fiber from the drum. And then also, it includes this, here I'll move my fleece. It includes this teasing tool, which I was jokingly referring to this as the lock pick. This teasing tool that opens up the fleece for drum carding. So all of that comes with the drum carder, and I think there might be a couple other things that I'm forgetting, but yeah, so that is why I went with this drum carder. It's made of great materials. This is solid wood. They have, it's just apparent that the Strauch company is a good company. They have great customer service, which if you go check out some of their videos, I think is really apparent that they really care about their customers and making sure that their customers are happy. So yeah, all of that and probably a little bit more that I'm forgetting. That's some of the reasons why I decided to buy this drum carder, and yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I think it makes amazing smooth bats. All of these were made with only one pass, so I have not run this through twice. This is all one pass, and I think this is ready to go. I don't need to do a second pass. I could spin straight from this, and maybe another drum carder I would have to run it through again, but because of the way that this machine has been engineered, I don't have to do that. And it also has to do with the care that I've taken to make sure that I've opened up my locks before drum carding them. Instead of just feeding them on, I make sure that they're nice and open, and that also helps. So, okay, I hope you enjoyed this video today, and I will have my next carding video up soon. That will be on hand carding my Fen fleece into Rollags. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.